with the time being 7:01. Present is myself, Carolyn Howell, Mike Anderson, Dan Smith, and Paul Simon. So next on our agenda is we're going to have a readdress of the Board of Ed budget based on the response of our letter and instruction to look at a 2.1% increase to their budget over the previous year. So Christine Wagner is on. I did not check to see if all of you had gotten her exemptions or deletions from budgets. Did you see that? Did you send it to all, Christine? Do you remember? Oh, you got it. Okay. I got it. Okay. So Christine, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I just lost the document I had in front of me, so just give me one quick second.
Yeah, of course, sure.
All right, let's see. Okay, so can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I sent out a recap, and we met last night and we went through to try to fulfill the request to see what a 2.1% looks like. I also attached the 3.27 that I had sent out the prior week, but I know it didn't quite make it to everybody, so I resent that one. And then I also sent one that we discussed at the 2.85. So I guess you wanted to see what 2.1 looked like. And basically what we would need to do is at this point, we would have to reduce 3 positions and remove middle school sports to get to that number. Everything else, all the other cuts, all the technology cuts, and actually we did look at putting in about 50,000 back in for technology, just because there are some things that with the new elementary school and some projectors and some wiring and things that we need to pay for next year. We know that's an expense coming. So we put that back in as well. In the 2.85, we'd actually zeroed out technology completely. So those are the 3 differences there.
And can you give us a brief definition of the 3 positions?
Yes, so
the criticality to programming, whatever.
Sure. To the best that I can do it, you may want to ask Kristen about it as well, especially on the math one. So we have one special ed teacher retiring. So we think we can manage it without it. We aren't positive, but special ed, moves a little bit each year. So at this point, we think we can manage without it. And that's, then we also have a literacy specialist at the elementary school. That one is she fills everything from, working with kids that are in extreme need of literacy help to those that just maybe need a little bit of help here and there. What would happen with that position is that we basically would no longer be able to give any literacy assistance to kids that are just maybe marginal on that. We would just only be able to work with the kids that are below a certain standard for literacy. And then the third,
what is her utilization? What has her utilization been like up to this point in time?
I would ask.
Answer that?
Yeah, I guess so. I was hoping is Ronnie on the call? I don't think she is. I mean, her utilization, she's got like a ton of students, but Peter can address that one.
She's
Hi, Christine, I'm on.
Okay.
Very good.
All right,
Thanks,
let
Ronnie.
Ronnie address that. If that's okay, I'd like to have
Yep.
Ronnie address that question.
Yeah, she supports students in grades 4, 5, and 6 who need support in the English language arts. And it could be writing, spelling, or of reading. And she goes to all the grade levels and supporting those students. It's not special ed students, but it is students who are below grade level.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one, I think Kristen is on, and is Allison on as well? Yeah, Allison
Yeah,
is on, so
yep.
she can address the math specialist or the math position over at the high school, middle school. And Allison, if you could touch on, you know, what the geometry and algebra would look like as well in reducing that position.
Sure. So the math position, currently, there are 2 high school classes, so 1 geometry and 1 algebra class, and then 4 support periods. So we would lose 4 support periods to our high school, to our middle school. And then the geometry and the algebra, we would look at combining and making class sizes large, 25 to 27, to pick up those 2 sections to teach. So.
And Christine, I want to also point out, it would mean absolutely 0 middle school math interventions as well, which, you know, we started that up, I want to say about 4 years ago, and it's made a huge impact on our students and how far they can progress in math. And it has allowed us to offer higher level maths like Calc 1 and the potential of Calc 2 to those students on the advanced track. So adding that position those years back has really added a lot of opportunity for both sides of the spectrum.
Okay, great. And the other thing I think I mentioned in my communication as well is NEASC had a recommendation that we have that high school support for math. We hadn't had it in the past. You know, we work really closely with making sure we're trying to fulfill all of our NEASC requirements, and that is one of the things that they highly suggested we keep. Well, we didn't have it at the time, but that we considered putting on.
Yes, especially at the high school level.
In the 3 positions that you noted on your piece to us, Christine, there's a salary range between 46,000 and 62,000. Kind of who's who in that mix? Do you know that?
We cannot divulge when you say who's who, I'm trying to figure out what you mean. Well, the
Not by,
teachers-
Peter, certainly not by name.
Okay, well,
I'm
again,
talking
what
about
happens
The
is
literacy specialist versus
Right,
a math
yeah.
specialist.
the literacy specialist, first of all, the math specialist, it'll be because we're not filling a position. When Allison went into administration, we had to hire a teacher, which I believe was around October or November. Correct me, Alice, if I'm wrong. And then what happened was we went out, and there is a teacher shortage in some areas, and especially when you're going out at that time of the year. So we were able to hire a per diem that we had who is getting her math certification. So we got what is called as a DSTAP certification from her. So her certification sunsets at the end of the year. So with that said, that position now will be closed off based on where we have to lower the budget to. The literacy position is the special ed position is basically a retirement, so we're not filling that position. So there's no bumping in that in any way, shape, or form. However, the other position, because the teacher is presently teaching the literacy at grades 4, 5, and 6, as Ronnie explained it, she has seniority rights. So she bumped the next senior teacher the least senior teacher in that order. So that's why there might be some discrepancies, because some were the elimination of a position where we had a high salary in. Another one was a middle of the road position, or I should say a new teacher who is not entitled to the position. And the other one was the bumping one. So that's the way it works.
Relative to those positions, and I'm just trying to get some feel for your thinking. Would you trade off any of these positions for the rehabilitation of the playground?
I would. How do you?
I don't see the rehabilitation of the playground in that budget, and I guess I'm having a hard time understanding that. We went back through it again, and we didn't see anything line item for rehabilitation of a playground. So if you could show me the line where you saw that, Dan, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
And the other thing let you know
is
is
labeled rehabilitation of the playground. You added that as part of the definition. It was grounds and maintenance, I believe.
so one thing we have been talking, so yeah, it's not the playground. The grounds and maintenance is not the playground. So we aren't doing anything with the playground other than making sure it's safe when we open the school, so that, you know, if there's pieces that have to be fixed, but we aren't adding equipment or anything like that. The other thing is this week, we had 2 conversations with Mike Ergo and Peter and Donnie at the town side, and we are looking into how can we look at the grounds? What can we do with that? How can we look at that position and maybe transfer that over to the town side? And now what we're trying to just figure out is, you know, if we're just transferring a line item to the town, it's not saving the taxpayer any money. So what we're trying to figure out is how can we work with that to maybe have the town take it over and then work the position so that it actually saves some money. We do think that's something that is possible. Right now, our grounds person that's doing the fields and all of the grounds and the mulching and all of that is a 10-month position. Is that right, Peter? 10 months or 9?
It's a 10-month position, and it runs from March 1st to November 30th. At the end of the term, the person is not entitled to collect unemployment or anything like that. So we do it in a way that follows the state statute, so that's the way it works.
So we were talking with the town about looking at when would we make that switch, and in November, that would probably be the best timing of that if that's something we decided to do. And we are looking into that. You know, it was brought up last week at your meeting. It was also brought up at our meeting the week before. So, you know, we've started the ball rolling on that. Again, we want to make sure we do it correctly. So it's not going to be something we just do instantly, but we definitely think there's a possibility to work with the town on that.
Okay. And the only other thing that kind of came up was the increase in the transportation contract. I think that number was 116,000. I think there was some mention that, okay, let's talk to them and see where that could go.
So what's going on right now is that we had mentioned that prior to going to distance learning. There's a lot of controversy right now and negotiation and discussion with busing contracts throughout the state. We're in conversation with our busing contract right now to figure out what can we do from now to year end. Peter, I don't know if you want to address that further.
So just to let you know, it gets a little convoluted now because all the districts are now negotiating with their bus companies as the Executive Order 7R came out, which was that we should be able to negotiate with them. We understand that there's the employees' wages and health benefits, but there was a caveat in there that the governor put in about the fleet. So we're kind of negotiating with them. But let me make this clear. In 2012, when I inherited the former superintendent's budget and had to cut $388,000 out of a budget that I didn't bill, I went to M&J. And M&J allowed us to forego the increase in that year. However, just for that year, they spread it out over the time of the contract. And, you know, for everybody's involved with labor or any contracts, when you ask to open up a contract to look at something, they're looking for something in return, like a longer contract and so forth and so on. So I had a conversation with them. It's not going to be anywhere what you think the increase is going to be. And anything we get would be spread over the remaining 3 years of this contract that we have. And they probably be looking for an extension too.
And Dan, just to tag on that as well, we just did that contract, I think 2 years ago. And really came out well on that contract compared to some of the other companies we were looking at. They really have been really good to work with us. They've been, you know, just a really great bus company to work with. So we felt like the contract we signed 2 years ago was very, very fair in everything. I don't know if there's room right now to wiggle on that one, just because of the situation with everything else.
Just for the specifics, Deb, while you're here, what are the increased fees for next year? What are they again?
For the regular ed, it's 34,000.
Yeah.
And for special ed transportation, it's a $72,000 increase.
So the 72,000, you can forget about that because that's the special ed transportation. That's based on the students' needs who travel from outside the district or within the district. The 34,000 may be negotiable, but that, and again, do you want us to kick the can down the road? And the possibility of the fact that they're going to spread it over 3 years and ask for an extension on a contract. As Christine said, we had 2 bidders on the last contract, and M&J, our bus company, which has been great, was significantly below. our concern is we don't want to rock the boat too much with some of these bus companies because they're all facing difficulties. And if we can't get bus companies next year because they're defunct, so there's we're balancing act that we're doing, trying to make sure we pay them fairly. In the same token, that we're not going to get hurt.
Let's just come back to the three positions. Of those three positions, relative to effort given by all three, which position seems to be the most critical relative to the need? Or does it matter?
It doesn't. I guess at this point, we'll have to figure that out. I don't know which. They're all critical. It's just I mean, at this point, I feel like we've given you so much information. You have our numbers. You kind of know where we're at. I'm willing to answer any questions you have, but to ask me to say who's more critical than someone else, they're all critical as far as we're concerned. So I can't really give you a pick one over the other answer, unfortunately.
Okay.
So
Well,
Christine, Dan, this is Paul. Sorry.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Just since you spoke about roles, which one's more critical? Is there a reason why these particular roles were selected? And
Yes.
maybe that's
Yes. So
sorry.
two of them are not going to be layoffs or non-renewals of contracts, because two of them aren't full right now. We just had retirees and we had Allison move out of her position, and we had a retiree on the special ed. So we thought instead of taking somebody's job away from them, it would make sense not to fill those two versus removing somebody's job. Then the third one was coming from, we had 4 teachers in the 6th grade that went over to the elementary school. So that 4th teacher was moved into literacy support. So we felt that might be the one to, again, go after next, because they're not actually, not that they're not important, because they're doing amazing work over there, but it's not pulling somebody out of a full classroom position, I guess.
And when we're not paying, we would not pay unemployment for those positions either. Like we will for the one position if we're bumping someone out. We'll pay unemployment for that position, but neither one of those positions will have no unemployment involved.
Sorry, I guess I wasn't clear. I guess maybe I was asking, why wouldn't you go after, look at roles in the central office, for example, versus a teacher?
Well, we don't really have any where to go in the central office. I mean, we just filled our bookkeeper position because we need one. We have a, I guess, we have a business manager, a bookkeeper, we have a secretary, and then we have Peter. So I'm not sure in the central office where we would cut that.
Well,
Exactly.
I see your proposal for how we would get to 2.1, and this is one possible scenario. I wouldn't think it's the only one you've looked at, right? Because there are roles throughout the whole organization. So
Right. We've looked at everything, Paul. When we start our budget process in December, we look at everything. We have looked at everything line by line by line for months and months and months prior to bringing the budget forward. That's where we came to the 4.95 initially, after looking at everything. When we were asked last week to take a look at 2.1, there's just I understand you guys would like us to find it somewhere else. There is nowhere else. I don't know how else. We've done a very good job with budgeting. If you look at our past budget increases, we've said for years, we have contractual increases every year. We cannot continue to come in at 0, 0, 0. We have been telling you that for years. We are doing the very, very best we can. I promise you, we are doing the very best we can. This is where we are right now. And if this is what you need us to do, you just need to tell us. We have nowhere else to go, unfortunately. We're not comfortable with it. The board was pretty upset about it last night. We'll do what you tell us to do.
No, I
at this
understand.
point.
And I have no doubt that you guys have absolutely done everything you possibly can. And I think we're all in the realization now, this is the reality of the time, right? Monies are what they are.
Yeah, and I guess
conditions
the other point to that, Dan, or Paul, I'm sorry, is that I think sometimes we look at it and say, well, it's just going to be this constant increase every year. You're just going to have this contractual increase. And while we do have a contractual increase every year, there's also things that occur throughout the year. You have attrition, you have retirements, we have things that we know are coming down the road with positions. So we are always looking at that, but it's better to plan staffing and, you know, how you do your classrooms and everything based on attrition and what's happening than on layoffs. And so we're looking at that as well. And, you know, but we need to, in the present moment, if we need to do this, this is how we have to do it at this point.
Some of the things that we talked about were one-time expenditures that could be moved to another pathway. Was there any identification there?
Yeah, the entire list is one that you have there. It's probably the entire technology that was removed. Some of the needs of equipment at the elementary school, all the maintenance purchases that we've already removed, those are all one-time things that we would have to go back in and try to get at some point.
Mm-hmm. All right.
We've removed all of the
Are
technology
there any
purchases.
questions? I see that. Yeah. Any questions from Board of Finance members to the Chair of the Board of Ed? Okay. Just kind of a recap as we enter into putting this next budget together. We have a revenue shortfall of $225,000. We are at a point where circumstances have led to literally a shutdown of all businesses, all entities, people being furloughed, some just being, you know, with no thought of even coming back, you know, not knowing when they're going to come back to their job. So, you know, it's just a backdrop where it's difficult to consciously bring forward a budget where we're looking to get a large mill rate increase. It's just painful. So, you know, just to take into consideration the 225,000 shortfall and having you at a 2.1 increase is nearly a mill in itself. So then that's not considering what's coming in from the general government side.
Dan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
And you know this because I've been here 8 years and I talk to you about this all the time. So when I get the audit report from Sandy Wellwood, the first thing I look at, I really don't look at my own audit, to be honest with you. I made them look to see if there's a management report in there. So we're lucky with that. But I always look at the town side, and I know going back to where the surplus funds, the rainy day funds was after my first year here, which was kind of stunning to me. So can you explain to me the $225,000 revenue shortfall and what's caused that? Because, you know, I will say this. I mean, we have to come in and budget every year. And I've been here 8 years and we've never come with anything but on target or with a small surplus, some years a large surplus. So can you tell me where the $225,000 shortfall came from?
Yeah, Christine, you can help me out with this, but we had a decrease in the grand list from the previous year. So that was key. Also, our supplementals were less than what they were in the previous year.
Explain to me what the supplementals are, please.
Yeah, they are the education cost sharing, the state grant.
Actually, you got more money last year than it wasn't a shortfall.
So Peter, what we're looking at is the numbers that we were given by the state for FY21, not the current year budget, but the projections that the state gave us for the governor's budget.
But for the year going in, but the last 2 years, you've gotten more money in education, correct?
I can't speak to that because I don't have that.
No,
prepared.
I guess I'm telling everybody that there was more money that this town received versus what was appropriated to us through that fund. Again, I'm not just trying to get this straight. So that's the supplemental. That's for going in next year. But this year, there should be a surplus there because of the excess money that you received, as well as the year before that. And what else was in that as well?
Yeah, the decrease in tax revenues from the grand list. And the big one was miscellaneous, the A5.20, Christine. What were some of the things in there?
So we had put in the money that we were getting back as the Eversource energy credit from the school construction project. That was a one-time, which is why it was in miscellaneous. So it's not something that we'll see in the next year's budget.
Okay, I just, you know, I'm a little concerned when sometimes when we come with a budget for that year, and sometimes we don't make it to where it should be. I'm not going to say anymore.
Yeah, as we look at this, Peter, and I understand where you're coming from, but you know, each year we have to look at, and we never know what if it's going to be constant or better until we get there. And in this year that we're looking at, the new fiscal year, we have a deficit in revenue over the previous year. That's as simple as I could put it. There we have it. You know, and the thought is, okay, you know, we can use the rainy day fund, and that's a discussion that the Board of Finance members will have. But to what level? You know, what we're trying to do is be empathetic to the conditions of the day and realize we don't have the revenue that we had last year. The combination of those things, you know, how can we mitigate a large tax increase, which we don't think is the right thing to do, quite frankly. I don't know how else to put it. So we're trying to find efficiencies, maintain functionality, have sensitivity to critical line items that we know do make an impact and contribute to things that are better, you know, in terms of the results that the district has gotten. I mean, we understand that the specialists have been very important and very contributory to good outcomes. Again, it's not for us to say what line items you should be dealing with. We're trying to build a totality, a budget in totality that we think is going to be right for the next fiscal year. And, you know, there's always trade-offs, and we'd like to give anything and everything we can to each of the asks, but, you know, we're finding it very difficult this year. Very difficult. And, you know, Peter, as you and I have had many conversations and history, I do realize that when we added the specialists in, that it was a good move, and they certainly have paid off in moving our students to higher levels, particularly as they are ranked against all others in the state.
And I appreciate that. And I will say this, and you're probably going to puke when I say this, because I've been doing this for 45 years and 25 years in high levels. My school budget that I had as a principal was 1.5 times the size of the district. My district budget was, going back 8 years ago, $133 million. So I pretty much know education. So when everybody's making suggestions to me, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? You know, as an example, I have a history as to why we're making the cuts that we're making. And I think Christine pointed this out. I've been telling you this for like the last 5 to 6 years. Even when I gave zero budgets. It wasn't a request from the Board of Finance. When I could give a zero budget, I did it. Is that not a fact? I did that. And I can go back and show you the years that I did that. And I remember the year I said, this is the last year we can do it. So getting back to what the cuts are and conferring with my Board of Education, because they can certainly overrule me on any of these cuts and defund positions and do what they want. But they hired someone who is an expert in the field, which I feel I am. I'm not trying to puff my chest out or anything like that. But when I got here, the first glaring things that I looked at after food service, believe it or not, was the fact that, because we're running surpluses and we've never done that before, was why don't we employ specialists? Because I did it myself. And that's what we've done to get the grades that, and I've always said this, you know, I came here, the scores were very, very good, but the specialists put us over the top. And it's not that we want to get rid of them. In this case, it is one, we're kind of spreading it around a little bit, so.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and for the benefit of the Board of Finance people, the summation of those three positions roughly is $160,000, just at a quick glance. Where they have cut 380,000, 160 plus is part of that 380 they've cut, which is the three positions. All right, any comment at this point on Board of Ed?
I just wanted
Go
to
ahead,
remind you
Christine,
too
sure.
that, I'm sorry, I just want to remind you, we also cut middle school sports.
Yes.
That's about $57,000.
Yeah. And what, again, just give a little definition, what are the programs in that are accommodated?
Christine, do you want me to do that?
Yes.
For all, it would be all middle school sports. It would be soccer for boys and girls. It would be cross country for boys and girls. It would be boys and girls basketball, cheerleading. It would be boys baseball, girls softball. I think that's all of them for the middle school level.
And Kristen, can you just hit on how many of our kids, what our level of participation is?
At the high school, we have 64% of our kids involved in sports, which starts at the middle school level, certainly. And in the middle school, even with the loss of sixth grade, we have well over 50% of our grade levels participating in these opportunities.
At this point, this is Paul Simons again. At this point, parents don't contribute to those programs at all?
To the
No,
sport
we have,
programs?
they
Yes.
don't. We have looked at pay as you go and things like that. They typically aren't a huge participation number.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at a situation where only the kids that can afford to play get to play. And we just don't really think that's a fair level playing ground.
And then
There
you-
are salaried coaches, there's transportation fees, there's equipment. I mean, it's legit middle school sports. It's very similar to high school, and it's our feeder program, obviously, to our high school sports, which is going to hurt us certainly, and hurt our movement, I think, in getting other towns to want to come to our school, because that middle school platform is where many of them have heard about what's been happening in the transformation at our high school. So that will certainly be a tough one.
So,
Christine, could you speak
as an,
to,
I'm sorry.
sorry, Peter.
No, I was going to say, as an example, Paul, we had a basketball game this year in which one of the towns came to play in middle school, and the kids just looked at the school, and of course the programming speaks for itself. And the next thing you know, Kristen is getting a phone call from the principal saying, "What would it take for you to accept our kids here at Wheeler?" So that's the kind of situation that we're at right now. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I just want to ask, I mean, do you have an idea what's other schools around? Are parents paying for kids to participate in many schools in the area?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Pay to play did not do well in the ECC. There are nominal fees sometimes associated, but there's no like 100% they're covering the cost of sport programs in any of the ECC high schools. There might be, a $50 nominal fee, but they did not find success when some schools tried to move to it. So they went back and put it in their existing budgets.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other Board of Finance members want to weigh in on the discussion we've had?
I do. I'd like to say something.
All right, Carolyn Howell.
So first of all, I just, thanks Christine for sending the information. Unfortunately, I didn't get it this morning when I checked my email. So I requested the information back on April 8th. It came today, after I was getting ready for work. So I haven't had a chance to thoroughly, go through everything.
And Carolyn, just to respond to that, I had requested the extension to today because I knew we were meeting last night and I needed the entire Board of Ed to weigh in on those cuts and what that looked like. So while you had requested it to come within a week's time, I did reach out and asked for the extension.
Okay, that's fine. I just haven't had a chance to look at it thoroughly, so. I know on your message that you said you cannot reopen the teacher's contract as it was recently negotiated, and it reopens, if it reopens during the first year, you're subject to unfair labor laws. So to that point, I would just say that I've been saying this as long as I've been on the Board of Finance, and as much as I can appreciate everything that everybody does on the Board of Education. And Mr. Nero's point that there have been years, many years, where there were 0 increases. Every year when we would talk about the contractual, agreements that were salaries and benefits, I would say this is not sustainable. When you guys go to your contract negotiations, this needs to be addressed. And here we are. It's like, I've asked that it be addressed. It wasn't addressed when we had the opportunity last year. And now here we are, and I'm being told now that it's not an option. So,
Can I
answer you on that, Carolyn? Would that be okay? Or do you want to continue?
No, I mean, it just,
Because, well, I'd like to respond to that. And maybe Paul didn't explain the process as well or anything when he came back from it, but I thought he did. We did so we're held by the state of Connecticut. So this is not a North Stonington negotiation problem. This is a Connecticut teachers contract problem. We came in salary-wise as good as we thought we could, according to our attorney and their attorney. The next step we came in lower than every other district. The next step, and I will also tell you, our teachers have been very willing to work with us. It hasn't been argumentative. If they could have done more, they're tied a little bit by their union, as we know. But if we would have went to arbitration, it would have cost us a lot of money, and we were told very clearly, you will lose. Now, some of the things in the contract that maybe didn't get touched on that you should know about that are really big wins for us. The teachers took on more of the cost share of their benefits. They also gave up some planning periods, which gives us more teaching time, which in turn leads to savings. There were a lot of contractual language things that came out of that as well that leads to savings. It isn't always just the salary line that can lead to savings.
I'm not necessarily only talking about the salary line. I'm just talking about the unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in today, where we're a month into a pandemic that is clearly going to go on for more than a year. We don't know, they're talking about having multiple waves of this. We haven't even peaked in our area yet. They're saying that next year, when it comes back around, and yeah, no, I'm not a mind reader. I can't predict the future, but I believe in making decisions based on data, informed data. So, it's really, I just think we're in a really tough situation right now. And I don't think that we should be cutting sports or, electives like music and art and things like that. I don't think we should be cutting teachers. And I think that if we're really all in this together, and any reasonable union or, anybody, I would think that knowing where we're at today and the current situation, we're clearly in a recession rate at the moment. Who knows how long this is going to last? And who knows where we're going to be in a year with the state and the federal government bailing people out right now. There's not going to be a lot of money to go around. And I think that we need to take that into consideration. And I feel terrible. I love our schools, but this is the reality of where we're at right now. And if you make a decision to cut teachers or sports, then I would say that's the decision that the Board of Ed is making. It's not a decision that the Board of Finance is making.
So just so I can go over a couple of things. So I guess when we went to a high deductible health plan and still have one, and to be honest with you, I think we're the only employees that have one, that when the year that we brought in a budget that was with teachers' salaries and benefits was $385,000 less than the year before. That's what it was back in 2013, 14. Excuse me, 14, 15. The teachers make concessions on health plan that is probably one of the toughest health plans that you can have. We don't have a PPO plan for that. That's the bottom line. So we could go to the teachers, but when you open up a contract, what's going to happen is they're going to say, okay, now that you're opening it up, then we're going to look at other things in the contract for other things. So they may come back and say, then we want to go to the same plan, say that the town has, which is a Cadillac plan, which is a PPO plan. That's what we want. We'll take a look at our raise and we'll do that. So I get that point, but then you're going to be opening and saying, we're coming to you. They're going to say, well, if we're opening the contract up, that's why when we have contracts and we have loose ends on a contract, we walk out with an MOU. For example, like right now we have an MOU to look at the salaries of some of our activities because some of our activities are outdated. So not to stop the contract, we did that. So if we go back to this item, it's that one item that we can go for. We don't have any MOUs. So I just want to say that we could go back to our teachers and we can say, open up the contract, but the bottom line is going to be, it's a fair game at that point for everything.
So all I'm gonna say about the insurance is that I've had a high deductible plan for a very long time. I work in the private sector, I work in healthcare. And I have to say, we had a visit for a specialist the other day. My specialist copay is $80. So, I mean, you think about, my insurance is from the plan that the state, you know, the Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. And it's the state exchange plan. But I mean,
We can't go to
you know,
that.
I make a good salary, but all I'm saying is there's a lot of people out there making $12, $15 an hour, and they're paying an $80 copay just to go to the doctor. This is the reality of where we're at right now. And I'm not saying that it's your fault or my fault, or it's just the reality of where people are at right now. And piled on top of everything else that we're dealing with, and to go to the people and tell them, look, we need this much more in taxes, I don't think it's gonna fly. I don't think it's palatable. I just don't. Especially right now. I mean, things may change in 6 months. We don't know what's gonna happen. But everything that I'm hearing and seeing from people that are very smart and in the know, they're saying it's not gonna get better anytime soon, and it could get a lot worse. And I would rather err on the side of caution than to, you know, put people in financial jeopardy.
Hey, Carolyn, thank you.
Nicely
You know,
said.
I think it still brings out the consciousness of where we're at. And we've done a pretty good job of containing taxation. And, you know, we've looked at how we rank against other towns that look like us, and we're about average. And yet we still have not been able to get a grand list that has gotten off the ground, quite frankly. I mean, we're seeing some origination of new businesses, but nothing that has been of any substance that has helped to bring relief to the residences of the town. So, and, you know, what we have done is, you know, evident all is made investments both in public safety and in new school facilities, which has brought up our debt management. So that's one other piece. I haven't talked about that too much, but, you know, we have been very conscious to pay as we go and try to limit the amount of debt that we have extended in order to bring forward new facilities that we think does in fact serve the residents of the town. So it's just a lot of pieces, you know, it could be, you know, benefit contracts, it's new facilities, it's whatever things that we need capital wise, just as we move forward. So let's close out the Board of Ed side. We're going to have some discussion and then we'll come back to you, Christine Wagner. Were there any other questions of the individuals representing the district from Board of Finance members? Okay. All right. Mike Urgo, you're on. Mike?
I am.
Okay. Good evening. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Good. Good. just kind of looking at your budget, certainly I've just, recalled an increase in debt management. That's built in. And some of the items that were increases in your budget were, for instance, road maintenance, I think at about $108,000. And I know that was for one of our communities where much has been needed. It seemed to me that you did mention in one of our meetings that you would look at, okay, is this something that could be mitigated in terms of not being one big chunk this year? Was there anything that came of that?
Yeah, so we don't really benefit from trying to, I think what I thought of was, well, maybe we could borrow to, to move this forward. We've put it off for quite a while, and this was the year to start the 3-year process of making those reparations on those roads. But really borrowing to do that did not benefit the town. It actually puts us in a position where we're able to use our town aid road monies in order to kind of help offset this cost a little bit. So this is the best way to go about it.
And this dollar amount or near dollar amount, do you see this as a recurring going into the following fiscal year?
Well, we definitely know it's going to be, I'm not sure if the entire amount would be recurring. I think it's going to depend on how we do with the winter, because, we're able to do some things with snow, with us having savings with regards to snow removal. So if we're able to realize that kind of savings, if we have a mild winter, then there'll be less of a burden. But, we are anticipating there's probably going to be cost associated in the next couple of years for this to get done properly. So.
Okay. Between you and Christine, it's hard to believe that April soon is going to be over and we'll be into May, and then we'll be within 60, 45 days of the end of the fiscal year. What's it looking like in terms of potential give backs? Snow removal and our preparation for that each year is a big piece of the highway department, but we've been thankful that we haven't had a hard winter, not even close.
Yeah, part of that is we've put that into our plan as far as the road repairs. So we are going to use monies to start that project now. And Christine, I don't know if you have any more information on other departments or any thoughts with regards to that.
Just pulling up some reports that I shared with the selectmen for the end of the month in March. We will have some savings in the overtime for the highway, but it's not just snowstorms that they need to come in for. When we had the wind last week, we did have to have some overtime for that. So that is something that does come up. We are having some reduced spending by some of our areas because as we get further into this current situation, people just aren't able to do some of the things they had planned to do with their budget. So we will see some savings for that. But at this point, we don't have a figure of where we're going to be.
Board of Finance members, are there any questions on the general government side from towards our first selectman? The other question I had is on land acquisition. I know for the last couple of years, we've been putting in $1,000 a year as opposed to what had been a pattern of $10,000 a year. And I think we were bringing it up in this proposed budget to 10,000 again. Is that correct?
Yes.
One of the things that you and I talked about was helping out our lakes in terms of treatment of the lakes to kind of curtail growth in the lakes, which was for the 3 lakes, major lakes that we're talking about, roughly $15,000. Is that a good figure, Mike, or?
Yeah, it is 15. I think we got a lot of feedback after we passed our budget forward that, some of the lakes are, would like to see that funding continue. I do think a couple of the lakes didn't actually get their money yet for this year, which they have. It was budgeted this year. They are entitled to that money. So that will help them. But I also think, you guys are moving this to a hearing, and certainly if those things are heard, gives us the opportunity to make adjustments. Of course, if the Board of Finance wants the Board of Selectmen to go back and make some adjustments, we could always do that. But I do hear and understand, and we did get a lot of feedback on the cutting of that line for the lake weed program, and certainly, we want to hear from the public and react in an appropriate way.
Okay. Was there anything on the general government's budget that Board of Finance members want to question?
No, thank you, Dan.
All right. So in looking at all of this, we have a situation where if we did not want to come in with a large increase in the mill rate, it would be one where if we were satisfied with the budgets now in their current form, the 2.1% increase, the general government's current budget proposed, brings up the question of, do we go in on the unassigned? And in going in on the unassigned, to what level? If we were talking about all things but debt management, with the realization that we've well talked to the public about the increases in the mill rate due to the debt management of the school modernization program, that would be, something in the order of $140,000. So about a quarter of a mil, give or take. So that could be the increase, but then you're looking at taking a sizable amount out of the unassigned. Any words of concern there?
Yeah, I think I do. This is Paul. That, I
Yeah.
think I think Caroline said it well, and as did you. It's a very difficult time. So I'm thinking that the unassigned fund should stay untouched. We should work within the budgets that we have with this small proposed increase overall. If we could not tap into that unassigned this year, I think next year is going to be worse, and there might be a year coming where we're going to have to do this. I think Dan said it also, that we don't want to get into these years where we have to do it every year, year after year, to make sure that we can, pay our bills. So it would be my preference this year to stay out of it, keep the 2.1 for the Board of Ed, keep the overall increases down to just an absolute minimum, for fear of what might happen, or to plan for what might happen in the future for this unsound financial times we're about to enter.
Dan, this is Joe Casano. What's a public comment, by the way? Did I miss that? I'm sorry.
It's at the end, Joe.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mhm. Mike Anderson. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that we're in a crazy time right now, and I appreciate all the members' comments on that. I just don't see how we can ask the Board of Ed come in at 2.1, because Caroline, I have to disagree with you that it's not our decision to cut teachers, it's their decision to cut teachers. They're telling us, our fellow citizens, and people on the board that know this budget well is telling us that if you come in, if we tell them it's 2.1, you're cutting middle school sports and you're cutting 3 positions. It's crazy. There's no way that that's going to fly with the public. It's just not. And I'm not going to support a budget that cuts middle school sports or cuts teachers. If they can live without the special ed position being refilled, and from what I've heard tonight, is that they can get away with that. But those other 2 positions are critical to the success of this school, these schools, and they should be funded. And the middle school sports should be funded. The 2.85 is a very reasonable ask. So if this board says it's got to be 2.1, it's on us just as much as it's on them.
So Mike, you're saying you're an advocate of the 2.85 increase versus the 2.16? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Because I think the town should be able to have a vote on that budget. If they turn it down, then the town is saying, we don't want middle school sports and we don't want those other teachers. Not us.
Well, I would agree that the town is the one that's going to say whether they will support it or not. I mean, they're the ones that's their voice, their vote. I think it's unfortunate that we find our situation, here we are meeting on Zoom. We don't even know when we'll be able to hold a regular town meeting where everyone would be able to attend. There's a lot of people who don't have internet, even in this day and age. So I don't know, I don't even know what's going to happen to the elections in November. I mean, we just don't know that. There's so many things up in the air. But I mean, I agree. It's certainly up to the townspeople. I think I have a good feeling for the pulse of like the average man on the street. And, and I understand all sides of it. I see where people are at right now. And, certainly if people want to put it through to the people, but I mean, I think it has to be done in a way where the people can participate and ask questions. And I think right now it's very limited as to how many people would be able to participate in these, I mean, how would you even go about this? Having these discussions, other than just putting it out there for a referendum. I mean, you just really don't have a lot that can be done right now.
Mike Urgo, what did I call for Mike Urgo?
Dan,
Yeah, I can.
this is Mustafa.
Hang on just a minute, Mustafa. I called on
Sure.
Mike
Sure.
Urgo, talking about the essence, the probability of a town meeting, a public hearing, town meeting, referendum.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I think the opportunity for probably the greatest participation we've ever had in a public hearing is before us, to be honest with you. We're getting better attendance right now at meetings than we ever have because people are more comfortable popping on their computer or jumping on the phone to be a part of a public meeting. So I think the public hearing is going to be great. I think it's going to be well attended and it's going to be virtual. So they'll either be able to get on Zoom if they're comfortable, or pretty much everyone has a telephone. They can call on, they can participate. The second part of your comment, Carolyn, is certainly, it's heard and it is a concern, but the truth is, unless we have this clearing up, there's the great possibility that the Board of Finance is going to have the end voice on this budget. And that is what the governor has put in his orders, and it's not a your decision type thing, it's a shall. So if we aren't cleared up in a situation where we can move to a town meeting, and a town meeting would have to be held in X amount of days after the hearing, generally. So, you know, it's possible that that would be end up voted on by us. So I think, you know, I think the Board of Finance does have to be comfortable with the budget that they're putting forward. I think a lot of work has been done by both boards going back to, you know, December or earlier. And, you know, this is what we've been elected to do. I mean, it's not something that we want to do. I think we all want it to go to a referendum, but that's maybe not what's going to happen. I don't want to say it's not going to happen because we don't know. But right now you're gearing up for the possibility of going to a hearing. Hopefully you're going to call for that sometime soon, whether it's today or another meeting from now. And then after that, after we've heard the feedback from people and they will have an opportunity to speak their minds and share their feedback, we would want to react to that budget in a way that makes sense. And then we'll see where we are there. So.
Okay, thank you. You know, kind of give you an encapsulation of what it looks like for the numbers we're talking about. If we were at a 2.1% increase on the Board of Ed, and we kept general government and debt redemption where it is, we're talking 585,479, which represents 1.1 mil. And that is not addressing the revenue shortfall that this budget was built on. If it went to a 2.85 on the Board of Ed, you're talking roughly an added $95,000. And that would put us, without considering the revenue shortfall, at a 1.28 mil increase. So we're at 29 right now. Current year, 29 mil. You know, if I were to levy a mill rate building in the revenue shortfall, you know, that's roughly another 0.4 mil. So we're talking 1.5 and 1.68. So, I mean, that's with the numbers as they've been presented, and that's not talking about, do we tap the rainy day fund?
Right.
Can I just ask a question, Paul?
Yeah, let me come back to Mustafa. I put him on hold when I had Mike up. Mustafa, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi,
What would you like
everybody.
to add? Yeah.
So I just kind of trying to support what Mike Anderson just said. You know, I will not agree with a budget that would cut any of the 3 or 4 positions that were mentioned or any program that is attached to school. If they're telling me, well, we're not buying a truck or we're not buying this or that, or yes, I would agree with that. But when it comes to education, talking about math, talking about other specialties, I'm not going to go for that for 95,000. I won't vote for that. There's no way. And this whole thing is based on putting our school up front, having people coming to our school, doing something that, you know, making some revenues out of this, you know, putting, you know, the school forward. But when you start coming down to cutting programs, that doesn't make any sense. Yes, we're talking numbers, but we're talking numbers, but we're forgetting that we're affecting brains. So it just doesn't work that way. So I can't vote for this for 95,000. There's no way.
Okay,
I mean,
well,
I understand what I'm saying. Numbers are numbers. And then if we go to 2.1, then we're going to have 1.1 mill rate. And then if we go over, so it's going to be 2.85. But we cannot go through the voters telling them, all right, we're cutting those programs. And then what do you think? No, we need to go to our, the voters with, we have these programs. Do you agree with these programs? If they say no, then we'll have to come back to the table and figure out something else.
Okay, thank you, Mustafa. Relative to that, just so both you and Mike Anderson understand, if you're advocates of the 2.85, it's adding an additional 95,000 to their budget, which potentially could save 2 positions and not necessarily save middle school sports. Or it could save middle school sports and 1 position. Do I understand that correctly, Christine Wagner?
We would be saving middle school sports and 2 positions. We just would not be, the 2.85 would just be not replacing the special ed teacher at this time.
So Paul, or Dan, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
So I asked before, like, what the estimated savings were, and I don't know if we've actually got a number yet. I mean, I did see an article in the New London Day yesterday about the Stonington school systems expecting to save at least 350,000 or more in their current budget. So I'm curious as to what the savings are going to be in our budget this year.
I can address that. We're looking at that obviously actively right now. The bus contract's a big piece of that. And as the discussion was before, we have a lot of purchases that we would need to make with any savings that we can get, to make our district whole again, basically. So we're hoping for a good year in savings because of this situation, but we also don't know what the summer is going to bring with special ed and making up those efforts. It's going to be expense as well. And that kind of goes back to my first message that I emailed to you guys. I really think this is an excellent time to put in the non-lapsing account. We've just completed a strategic plan. We need to make all of our financial decisions based on that strategic plan. We have huge technology needs. We are doing distance learning right now. That is a technology-based learning, and we need to be able to support it. So if we were able to make some sound strategic movements forward with the non-lapsing account, we wouldn't be doing this short vision every 12-month. It's just so short-sighted to me as far as looking ahead and looking down the road. So I'm asking you again to consider the non-lapsing account tonight.
So I'm just going to respond to that. And thank you for the comments. I also believe in not, micromanaging from year to year and looking at the long term. And I was actually asking a question, which I was told wasn't concerning all of us tonight talking about this budget. It has to do with sewer and water. And actually, I would disagree with that because I think we have to talk about, if that's something that the town is going to be doing or not doing, that impacts all of these budgets going forward from here, along with everything else. I mean, so you are talking about long range plans and what kind of money are we talking and how is that going to impact our budget this year and next year and 5 years from now? So I think it's important to talk about all of these things. And if there was any savings this year and you were able to purchase technology, how would that affect your budget for next year? I'm just,
Well, we don't have any money in the budget for technology for next year.
So what savings do you anticipate? Have you come up with a number? I mean,
we don't have a real number yet. I hate to throw a number out because what happens is then that becomes the number that everybody thinks is the number. So, when we cut in technology was over $100,000. I would love for us to be able to refund our technology program and start looking at a Chromebook environment and see what that all is going to look at, which is going to be less expensive than replacing all the laptops that are out in the field right now. So I don't know exactly what the number is, Carolyn. I don't mean to be vague about it, but there's so much working right now that those financials are really up in the air. We couldn't even approve our financials last night because we have so much to look at. And my hope is that there's enough savings to do all of the purchasing that we've had to cut out from our initial budget that we brought forward.
When
We're not hearing you, Carolyn.
when are you going to know what those numbers actually are? There has to be a date when you will know.
We should have something with the bus contract here shortly. And then usually we find out what our year-end number is looking like about mid-May.
Right.
And that's where that becomes difficult because we find out that number and then we have to scramble to figure out, now what do we do? Where the non-lapsing account would allow us to say, okay, let's be strategic about this. Let's look at this. Let's plan accordingly. Does it now allow us to fund something that maybe we didn't think we could fund in next year's budget? So that's why it just makes so much more sense. It's kind of like when you have a savings account in your home budget and you experience a good year with maybe the cost of oil or something, you don't run out and say, I have to spend it all before June 1st and drain your savings account. It just doesn't make legit sense. I mean, it's the same with on the town side. The town side is able to save money for purchases they need to make. And I just don't understand why we can't take money that's in a budget that's already been approved and continue to use that money for education moving forward and not being told, use it or lose it.
Okay, so that's the answer. Dan Smith had his hand up first, and I'll come back to you, Mike.
Hey, Dan, this is towards you. I've been, while everybody was talking, I've been crunching some numbers and everything. And you did bring up a good point about the Kingswood Meadowwood, $108,000 that is sitting in there. Is it possible that we can move that out a year or two to be able to fund some of this other directives especially for the Board of Ed?
Mike, that comes to you, Mike Urgo. Is Mike Urgo still on?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Anything's possible. I mean, I can tell you over the last several years, I get a lot of phone calls about this, a lot of complaints. We haven't addressed it over the last couple of years. And I kind of, with the selectmen, you know, we all felt this was a priority based on the feedback we've gotten. Certainly, we're happy to react to any direction from the Board of Finance, but it would be my opinion, based on the position that I'm in, that now is the time that we ought to do this. We've put it off long enough.
Oh, I totally get it. The bad section of road is right in front of my house, but if I had to choose between, having special education instructors for the school or a road that is serviceable right now, and is it going to fall apart in the next 2 years? I'd probably go for the prior than the later. Also, I would also be, I'm also looking through, and there's quite a few increases. Are the increases on the general government side union positions?
So let me back up to your other comment. I mean, the way we build budgets, we can't look at it like I'd rather have, a special educator versus a road, or the fire department versus this, or the library versus that. I mean, we're trying to balance a budget in a way that's as fair as possible for everybody, looking at all the needs of the town. It's very difficult. We're all trying to be collaborative. So I always try to shy away from this versus that. I mean, I think it's let's try to collaboratively come up with something that works for everybody, and we try to do a good job of that. Union positions, we do have unions at the town, and we did go through negotiations last year. We actually had budgeted last year for 2% increases, figuring that's probably where we'd end up, and actually we ended up at 1.5%, which was pretty good. But this year it is 2%, and those are negotiated increases. I will say the selectmen have remained flat, so we did not put in for any increases for the selectmen's salaries, but everybody else is 2%.
Well, we have $12,000 to the town attorney additional for this year.
That's not really additional. That's actually just we moved some things around as far as reallocations. Christine, you want to weigh in on that?
Yep, and that's not a salary position. That's we work with 4 or 5 different groups of attorneys. So those are just the attorney bills we pay for all the variety of things that the town's working through. But we move the money from our tribal attorneys to our regular town attorney line.
Okay,
We've
yeah.
actually reduced attorney costs over the last several years pretty substantially.
Because I would be, like line B104, cut $6,500 off that. We can't have, we're asking for the Board of Ed to do cuts, but we're also having increases on other either expense accounts on the general government side. Those accounts should be flatlined unless they have a really, 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 really good reason why they need to be increased.
So you guys have met twice, Dan, and we've already come back, I think a 4th time with changes to our budget. We've come down quite a lot. I'm more than happy to go back to the Board of Selectmen. Again, they've been very willing to continue to work on things. We did not get direction to do anything further to our budget. If that's the direction we're given, we're happy to go back to the drawing board if that's what you're telling us.
Yeah, I think, we were awaiting the readdress by the Board of Ed, Mike, and, what would be the impact in terms of the criticality of their successes, their programs, and asking for the reductions that we have asked for. And there seems to be a sentiment, to want to hang on to math specialists, literacy specialists in their budget. And yet that's going to mean mill rate increases that even if we went to a public meeting, town meeting, just my own sense of the people at large, they're going to find it difficult to understand. So we're looking at all possibilities. I'm just trying to, now at this point, just trying to shape it to something that could be acceptable.
I'm happy to go back to the board if that's the direction of the Board of Finance and look at things differently, if that's what and I hear every single need that's out there, and I agree that these school needs are absolutely important. So whatever we can do to try to help, we're happy to do it.
Well, I'm kind of on the sentiment, if I could have other Board of Finance members weigh in. I do believe that the roads need to be repaired, but, relative to where we are this year, would I look to push that out, that 108,000? Anybody? Dan, I got your, Dan Smith, I got your sentiment. Anybody else? Mike, you're good? Taking it out? Yes. Paul Simon?
Yeah, if it doesn't absolutely need to be done, why not, to use a bad term, kick it down the road? But again, as long as this overall budget, we think it can pass. And I know you're talking about, 1.1 mils, and it's really important to keep these increases to a minimum. So it might be a combination of the 2.1 and the reduction to Mike's budget. I mean, it's awful to say, and I get it. But it's a rough time.
I mean, I would 100%, just so you know, if this comes out of the budget and the board wants to do that, I would definitely look to go for an additional appropriation in the year for it. I mean, it's been pushed this long. I can understand the thinking on it. But I mean, in the seat that I'm in, just so you know, I get a lot of calls about it. It's a problem. But I would look to go for an additional appropriation on that item sometime into the fiscal year, when we're a little more further beyond this whole COVID thing. I mean, of course, I got to talk to my board about all that, but that's just a personal opinion.
Thank you, Mike. Dan Smith?
Yeah, Dan Sprang, I think just directly to, I think you're going to get, everybody's going to get a lot more phone calls on not being able to have the specialists and the special ed teachers and, sports more than having rough roads, or, the roads are in decent shape. They're not the best, but they're in decent shape. They're serviceable. There's no big potholes or anything like that on those. I think you're going to get a lot more phone calls on services being cut at on the Board of Ed side and in the school than you would be, on $108,000. If we're not talking about unfunding it, we're just talking about pushing out a year or two until the economic climate starts picking up a little bit.
Yeah, I can tell you what I get calls on, and I'll be getting a lot of calls, and I'll continue to get a lot of calls. And I'm sure the school will get a lot of calls about school things, and there's a lot of things that we get calls about you wouldn't imagine. But I wouldn't push it out. What I would do is I would talk to my board if they are willing to take it out. We'll look at that. If we're directed to take it out, we'll certainly do that. But I will come back. Like, I would advocate for coming back for an appropriation this year. We've already waited years. And that's something that I would look to, and that will of course come to the Board of Finance. So I need to do my job and you guys need to do your job, and I respect that. So totally good.
Okay, so if we're moving things around a little bit here. If we were request a reduction on the general government for that line item, which there seems to be some sentiment to do. If we maintained a 2.85 in order to have middle school sports and 2 specialists, we're looking at the potential of levying a 1 mil increase and taking roughly 270,000 from unassigned, which is more or less covering the shortfall on revenue. Otherwise, we're back to talking 1 1/4 or better, 1.5 mil increase. So let's have a little discussion about taking an amount. And again, this is a rough number depending on what finally shakes out of $270,000 from our unassigned. Our balance there is 3.1 something million. And it's something that we have, if you look at the audit, something we've built up since 2010 with some design in mind. So, and it has served us. So what's our thoughts there? Mike Anderson?
What is that as, what's that as a percentage, Dan?
That would be a little less than 10%. I can tell you here.
No, what are we at a percentage right now for our undesignated fund?
We're a little over 15%.
Okay.
And the 3.1, let's use that number, it's 3.1 something, is against our budget expenditure. That's where we get the percentage.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're a little over 15% there.
Yeah.
And if we took the, what'd you say, 275?
Roughly 270. The numbers are going to move a little bit, but that's roughly what the number would be.
What would our percentage be at that point?
That would move us to a 1 mil increase.
Right. What would our percentage be to our expenditures at that point, if we took that 270?
Again, just off the top of my head, we probably would be at a 14.5, 14.3%.
And the state allows us to be how low?
The state doesn't govern it. We had set a floor at 8.5%. And that if we ever hit that, all bets are off. We have to get back above the 8.5% unassigned. And thankfully, we're beyond that. And that level, that percentage, is at the full discretion of the Board of Finance. Now, if we talk to our auditing team, you know, they would suggest something like 18% would be best. The other way to look at it is, of that unassigned, how many months of operation would that provide the town? And so we're always looking at the potential of having at least 2 or 3 months of operational funding in the bank with still some reserve. So again, that's another piece of the thinking there. So I think to demonstrate that, look, we recognize it's tough times, and we're going to help out the taxpayer by taking some from the unassigned, I think would be received very well. But again, for all that we want, it means we're still moving to roughly a 1 mil increase. Now, we could probably shave that down to something that's just under 1 mil. But, you know, we've gone to the town with roughly a 1 mil increase before, and it hasn't flown. So that all comes out of the, you know, the town, the public hearing, the town meeting, then moving us to a referendum.
Well, I think everyone has to remember that 0.25 of that is a built-in increase for our, so.
Debt repayment. Yep.
Right, that the town expects, and that we, as we've been fiscally responsible for the past 3 years, have been putting in every year. I mean, we put in 0.5 first.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, moving the numbers, polishing it a little bit. I mean, we could take a little bit more from the unassigned so that we're coming in at, you know, a 0.8 mil or 0.85 mil or 0.9 mil.
Well, I would think going to Mike Ergo's point about asking for an appropriation, which I mean, me personally, I would love to be able to use the general fund in the coming year to do special appropriations out of that general fund to do these things, take them out of the budget and go to referendum on a special appropriation next year on those one-time purchases that you tried to do with the Board of Ed. I think if we can find more in the Board of Selectmen that we can do that, I'd be all for using the general fund in that manner. So it's, I mean, how does it work right now, Dan, between the board for using the general fund for fill in the gap right now? How does that actually work?
Yeah, it would come in as showing as other income. And so we would have another revenue line that, in fact, I think there's one that exists. Christine, you could probably help me there. But there's one that exists because we've done that use that line for deobligation of capital projects. So it would be the same line. And we would be motioning and voting on using the unassigned to be part of other income. And then, you know, what you talked about, the pathway for appropriations, anything over 20,000, if approved by the Board of Finance, has to go to a town meeting. So the town meeting hears the rationale for the request, and it's a vote of those present at the town meeting. So
Okay.
if you got a good argument, it gets by.
Yeah.
But it's heard by the public.
I know Paul said earlier that he doesn't want to use the general fund in this budget, but I just think that if there's any time in our history that it's appropriate, now is the time. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. I think, you know, taxpayers are going to say, oh, look, we've got almost 3.2 million that we've paid taxes on just sitting there and not really serving us. Well, for those who have worked with me over the years, I've always talked about why it does serve us and how it does work. But they're sensitive to the fact that they've paid taxes to put that money aside. And I think it's easy for them to understand or appreciate that it could be used to mitigate a tax increase in a tough year. Any other thoughts on using the unassigned? Mustafa, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I mean, you've been on the board of finance a long time, so you know, I value your input.
Well, my only concern is, I mean, I never agreed on, you know, my opinion on this, like I never agreed on touching that account. Now, okay, let's, we can get some money out of that account, but my concern is, would this be becoming a habit, like whenever we need money, we're gonna go to that account? That's my concern. So which means everything that we've been doing all these years, now we're kind of like, we're going against what we were preaching before. That's my concern.
Yeah, you know, the threat is you present a little bit of a precedent where, you know, in the next year, taxpayers could say, well, you did that last year. Why aren't you doing it this year?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, we're not even at 18%. 14% or 15%, this is like probably 3 months of 3 months of expenses for our town.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not that great. You know, there are people, they have 18, they have 20. And I think everybody was there when our auditor was talking about these things. So, and it took us many years to get there, not 1 month or 2 months or 1 year or 2 years. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, if we just were putting simple math to it, just so everybody kind of catches on to what I was talking about, with a $20 million budget, if you simply divided that by 12 times 2, you come up with $3.2 million. So, I mean, that's the wisdom of having that unassigned, and you know, to mitigate a high mill rate being levied, you know, do we use some of it? And then there's still the potential of appropriations, whether it's for technology or for roads or whatever, where you potentially could use another $250,000, $270,000. So, any other comments there? Carolyn, how do you feel about using the unassigned?
I'm not opposed to using it, but I would be opposed to, like Mustafa said, you know, having people continue to use it to try to balance the budget. I think right now, you know, times are hard. So if that's something that we need to do, certainly we should to help the taxpayers. But I also believe that we still need, you know, more numbers before we can really make a decision about, you know, the budget for next year, because we really don't know where we're at with the budget this year, even in spite of all the potential cost savings. Just to know, I mean, just to be fair to the taxpayers, that's all.
Sure.
Not to say that they wouldn't be supported one way or the other, just I think we need to have good data to make informed decisions.
Yeah. Dan Smith, how about you?
I have no comment at this time.
Okay. All right. I don't think we're
Dan?
I don't think we're at a point where we need to be yet. So who's
Dan?
calling in? Who's asking?
This is Ann Aiken.
Oh, Ann, you're on. Okay, I didn't realize you were there.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
I am in favor of using the unassigned funds for appropriations. I would rather not use it as backfill for making up the budget deficit.
Okay. All right. That means I've heard from everyone at this point. I don't think we're at a decision point tonight. Does anyone feel like we're at a decision point?
No, I really don't, Dan. So if you just run past that last scenario you stated, so you were still saying 2.85 increase for Board of Ed.
Yeah, 2.85 would be $392,600.
Okay, then on top of that, we were going to take out 270 from the unassigned,
Yeah,
and then still asking Board of Selectmen to go back to their budget and remove at least $108,000 more.
correct.
Was there additional adjustments to that scenario that you laid out that would still put us
That
north, like
would roughly put us at 1 mil or slightly under 1 mil.
1 mil increase?
Mhm.
So I mean, I think we've all been kind of dancing around all night. That still feels excessive in these times to me. What does, I know if we made the Board of Ed at 2.1 and then tapped that undesignated for its $90,000 to fund the 3 teachers in the sports, do those numbers square to you?
That would mean we would be taking roughly the 10% that we talked about at one time. So if I added the 95 to the 270, you're talking 330, 325 in that area.
I'm just trying to get all these things sorted in my head because I hate that I'm doing what I can to try to, and Peter and Christine, I apologize, to not make a new bottom line, a new higher floor, if you will, to the Board of Ed's budget that then we'd have to fund next year. I'm trying to find ways to prevent that. I'm not sure if this is the best way to do that or if I'm even thinking about this correctly.
So if I'm
I just have,
go
I
ahead.
get
Go ahead,
Christine-
Peter.
I got
I'm
Christine
sorry.
Wagner, and then I'll come to you, Peter.
Well,
I guess my
I'll mute.
question is, Paul, on that, as we've found in the past, when something is cut, it never comes back. So when you're cutting middle school sports are gone because we will have a contractual increase next year. We will come back to you and say, here's a contractual increase. We'd like to re-add middle school sports. And you're gonna say, absolutely not. We do not want to increase your budget. So same with technology. We're right now operating a school without a technology budget. That to me is absurd. I don't know how you run a school with a 0 line item on technology, but year after year now, since that's been zeroed out, we are unable to get that back in. So next year, if I come back or we come back and say, okay, we'd like to put those teachers back in, we'd like to put that support back in, and our parents overwhelmingly had said, please give us middle school sports, that number is going to be really large next year. So I understand not wanting to raise the bottom line. I totally get that. But at some point, we have to keep our programming in. And, we're not adding in frivolities here to pad our bottom line, I guess. I'm where I get concerned is what does next year look like? Because I've heard that things are tough since I've been on this board, and I've heard it prior to that too. So things are tough every year. And my concern is what does next year look like? And what does the year after that look like? Because you can only, if you look back to the pie chart, like I said, I mean, we're going to cut the teachers now. We get that. That's where we're at. But next year, what do we get back? We now still don't have any technology, and now we don't have sports. We will not probably be able, we'll have to go back to those districts that want to pay tuition to us. Remember that line item that we talked about that's not being discussed tonight at all, and let them know what programs have been cut. A big picture view here, a big picture view, not a 3-month view, not a 6-month view. I know it's tough right now, but it will get better. It will get better.
Thank you, Christine. Peter Nero, you're up.
I'm not sure if Paul was getting at the fact of, and I know what he's talking about. How can we do things? Maybe I'm wrong, Paul, in purchasing away from the budget that would not increase the MOE, the maintenance of effort. Is that what you were talking about? Yeah, that's it. So, and again, the problem that we have is that we've cut so many things out over the last 4 years. Like if you were to say to me, yeah, we'll purchase a one-to-one program for the district. We'll do that for you. Well, that's a one-time purchase, and we'd only have to maintain that, moving forward in the next 3-4 years, we'd only be hitting the budget for supplementary stuff. We wouldn't be hitting for that big capital item. And that would, again, if that was say like $95,000 item and you were paying for it, well, our maintenance of effort would not reflect that 95,000. Again, I think that's what you're talking about. So, and then I remember the scenario. It was a different Board of Finance when I said we needed buy a van for us. They said, no, we'd rather give you the money. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense because even though it's only 20,000, you've just increased our maintenance of effort by 20,000. Now, I may be a fool for saying that because it was a good thing for us. But, again, if there are things that you would have purchased from, say, your unassigned fund that would be one-time items, then you're looking at keeping your maintenance of effort, reasonable. Because you're always, like Christine said, you're always going to have labor costs. We can't solve the problem with binding arbitration in the state of Connecticut, nor will we ever. So.
Dan, if I could ask a question.
Yep, go ahead, Mike.
Christine just alluded to it, and we really never talked any further about it after a couple presentations, but there is no revenue in the budget for students, and I'm wondering, since it sounded, when the Board of Selectmen first put a budget forward, we threw something in there, and it sounds like it's probably going to happen, and it would help in some manner. Did you want to put revenue in there for 5 or so students? Because that sounds like based on what I thought I heard, it sounded pretty realistic. Or Christine, am I misspeaking about that? I don't want to misspeak.
I think it's realistic that it's going to happen. I think we have to see where our cuts are first. And I don't like to say this is going to happen when we don't have a commitment. Because I think if there's towns out there that are considering us, they're listening to this right now or any of that, it's a little bit premature to count on that until we have the commitment. I think what they need to see is that we're making an effort to maintain the programming that we have so that they can make a decision on their side of what schools they want to send their kids to.
I think you're right, Christine. I don't think we should count what I'll call fictional revenues right now. I mean, they may come to fruition one day, but it's not real. So I don't know that we really could count that. I agree with you.
I agree with that also.
Yeah, I think I would have to say the Board of Finance has not pressured the Board of Ed relative to School of Choice Initiative. We heard the presentation. I think we have a level of comfort and belief in it, but it's not there yet. So until whatever it's going to be, some kind of contractual agreement between the districts, we can't count on it. Yeah.
Right.
But there was a thought there that could be a reality. Nobody questions that. So.
Well, I've still been in contact with 2 of the superintendents, but again, because of COVID-19, we're all at a standstill right now, to be honest with you. But, as soon as we feel as though we have a handle on the budget moving forward, I mean, we're going to expedite those talks and get everybody in on that. But again, I always try to be as conservative as possible when doing these things. And that's why we said, let's put it this way. If none of this happened and we are looking at a fair and decent appropriation. We'd probably have contracts signed and agreements on things, because every district is looking for something different in terms of, contract. So,
Thank you, Peter.
yeah, welcome.
Anybody else from the Board of Finance at this point? My sense is who is that?
Just one thing.
Oh, Mustafa, go ahead.
Just something quick. You know what? I mean, Paul, or when you're talking about like it is not real yet, or it's not reality, or the towns are not. They're trying to bring their kids here. They're not trying to buy a car, like to put a down payment. We're not gonna ask them, "Oh, you're gonna give us a down payment, so we know you're coming." So now we're gonna have to start doing, these programs and make it like legitimate, so for your kids benefit from this. This is something that we need to do for other towns to look at us to come to our school. That's what we need to do. It's not some kind of like we need to have them come in, then we start doing the program. I don't think it works that way, I believe.
So I'm going to try to make it, what you just said, Mustafa, clear to all others. What you're saying is we have to do what we think is right for our district, our students, and not put on the dressing with the thought that we're attracting somebody else. Is that what you're saying?
No, really. What I'm saying is like, I think what Paul or other people are saying, like, well, we don't know if these schools are coming to our district or not, so we cannot start preparing for something that we're not sure about. But we can't go that way. We have to keep our programs, sport, math, and everything else for them to be able to decide to come to our district or to our schools.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I guess Dan, really the point you were trying to make, I think is really valid. So to be frank, I wasn't really too concerned with other students, right? Because ours are the ones we have to take up first, and we'll do what we can to take care of that bit of their organization. But it'd be great if someone else wanted to come to the school, but certainly shouldn't be our first priority.
All right. I think kind of sum things up. I think we've had a good discussion. We've had a lot of less interjection and pull and tug. For Board of Finance members, I think I'd like to work with Kristen Diaz, run a couple of these hypotheticals on OpenGov, illustrate those to each of the Board of Finance members. So as we meet the next time, you're not working off me just throwing numbers out in talk, that you've got something that you actually can look at so that we can get to an endpoint. How does that sound to everybody? Agreeable?
Sounds great, Dan.
Yeah, okay. All right. So we're going to end our discussion on budget prep with the thought that we'll run some illustrations through OpenGov and get those out to you and meet again. Dan Smith? We can't hear you, Dan.
Are we done sending the budgets back to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed? So next meeting, are we gonna, if we find something we like, are we gonna go line by line for the general gov and start making it work?
Except for one point, I think that there seemed to be a level of agreement or consensus on the road maintenance of 108,000, that we would like the first selectman to take it back to the Board of Selectmen and see what could be done there. Is that what I was hearing? Board of Finance members? Mike says yes, Dan Smith says yes, Paul Simon says yes, Carolyn, she says yes.
I just,
Mustafa?
Yes.
I just don't see how the numbers work.
What's that?
I just don't see how the numbers work without that coming out
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's why there's a level of consensus there. So Mike Ergos, he's on, he's heard it, and he'll address that with his Board of Selectmen. Okay, Mike? Mike Urgo?
Yeah, no, we'll go back, this will be the 5th time coming back with a budget. I mean, I hope we've heard the feedback that you guys have, and we've heard other feedback too in the community, so we'll make some adjustments. We'll come back to you with hopefully what's a final budget that you guys will be
great.
satisfied with.
Thank you, Mike. Christine Wagner,
Thank you.
did you want to close out with something?
I did just, again, my ask was about you guys making a decision on the non-lapsing account. It would really, you've heard my opinion about it, our need for it. So I was hoping that we've asked repeatedly to have this actually addressed. So I'm hoping we can do that tonight.
Because of what we've been dealing with, I don't want to say it's been to the back burner. I did reference it to Christine Diaz to talk to our town attorney as to, okay, what is the right way to set it up? I have shared literature on that account with all of the Board of Finance members, so it's not something we've not discussed or looked at. I think what we're trying to do is get a budget prepared that we think we can approve and move forward to the Board of Selectmen. It doesn't preclude that we have a discussion on that RISA account. So
Okay,
I
they
have
go
to leave
hand
it
in
at that.
hand, I guess.
Dan, one thing with
If I was giving appropriations out, and you would say, well, you would counter and say, well, you got the RISA account. For me, it would be nice to know that if there were givebacks, it was coming back to the unassigned. Mike Anderson?
I was just wondering, do other towns have this? And I saw that your ask was 2%, but you gave an example from Sterling with the 1%. What's the average? What's the territory like in the neighboring towns?
So I reached out to the chairs around the state. I got responses from about 9 of them. The Sterling one I sent up to you because their size is similar. The reason theirs was 1% is the policy they sent me was at the time that was the maximum it could be done, but the state has changed that now to make it 2%. There's way more than 9. There's a ton of them out there that have it. I mean, the state has put this into place for these exact purposes, for better planning, for better spending, for better budgeting, for better use of educational money that's already been approved by the people of the town. So it is out there. It's not uncommon. There's some accounts out there, and a little bit bigger towns. Like I'm thinking Milford off the top of my head has like 2 million. Some years are putting 400,000 into their account. Now they have a bigger budget than we do. There's other towns that have, done things that when I was looking at, I'm like, we wouldn't even dream of doing, like putting in a whole new turf field and things like that. So towns have used these accounts for years and years and years. Our hope with it is just to help us with these line items that continue to be cut. I mean, we're not looking at big purchases here. You can structure it however you'd like. The memo of understanding that we sent to you was drawn up by our attorney. So it's been done by a school attorney. But we've been asking for a long time, and it just seems to kind of keep going to the back. And it would be so helpful to us to know planning forward, do we have it or don't we?
So 8 years ago, Chuck and I went to the Board of Finance with it. And at the time, as Christine stated, it was 1%. And at the time, it was only for capital expenditures. In other words, you could sequester a whole 1% of that year's budget. But then they increased it to 2% with really not a whole lot of restrictions on how you use it. So that's why some towns may have 1, sometimes may have 2.
All right, thank you. And believe me, it's not out of discussion, Christine. We see the rationale to it. And relative to us having looked at it, because I was on the board at that time years ago, we were still working on the strategy of building that unassigned that has bared fruit in terms of being able to go to the debt market and build a new volunteer fire company building and our 2 new school buildings. So Christine Diaz, was there something you were going to weigh in on at some point relative to that?
No, I'm okay for right now. Oh,
Okay.
wait. So I think, I guess the Board of Ed has shared with you the proposal, but we would need to see a copy of it to share it with the town attorney, to see what the thoughts are. That was the part we were waiting on. So I
can
it's
get it
there,
over
but-
to you. My understanding from our attorney is that it just had to get approved by the Board of Finance. So the Board of Selectmen actually didn't have to do anything with it, but I can send it over to you and you can take a look
Great.
at it.
Okay, thank you.
Mostly you're just going to want to look at the statute on it.
Yeah. So again, we're going to work some of these hypotheticals on OpenGov, share those with Board of Finance members. I hope that we get together a week from today.
We're still gonna have public comment or not?
Yeah, we're working down the agenda. I don't see us doing previous minutes right now. The time,
Dan,
yeah,
Dan, can I weigh in on that?
on the minutes.
Yes,
I know that you've been
Um,
posting the draft minutes, Ann. Yeah,
right. Can I send out copies of the draft minutes to all of the Board of Finance members so that they can look at them and then just either approve or quickly amend them for our next meeting so that they can go to approved status?
perfect. I like that, Ann. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
That would help. All right. So with that being said, we're into, I jumped there. I got public comments before previous minutes, but we'll go to public comments now. So whoever might be on who would like to say something or have a question, again, you're limited to 2 minutes, please.
Joe Casada.
Okay, Joe Casada, you're recognized.
So my two questions, well, one comment, two questions. So all these meetings I've gone through with the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen. Now, one thing is about we're working together about putting forth some public safety being an issue. Again, I reiterate, the email sent to you guys about funding the 2 firemen because of the situation we're in prior to this pandemic and during this pandemic. And I've yet to hear back from either or Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance supporting this position. So I keep saying this over and over again. You guys are rolling the dice. It's going to happen. If it's your house, your family, the school that we spent all this money on to support, the fire truck doesn't get out or somebody gets hurt, it's coming at you. I'll be the first one to say in front of all you here, something does happen. I'm gonna grab these minutes from this meeting and I'm gonna post it in the Wesley Sun Northern Day, say, we tried, and fall on deaf ears. Board of Selectmen doesn't think it's a priority. They formed this committee. That's, in my opinion, a waste of time because we've been saying this for 15 to 20 years that this is coming. We're running out of volunteers. We need some help. The chief of the fire department, president of the fire department, North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company has told you over and over and over and over again, we need help. And I've yet to get any direction from anybody. They're just keep avoiding the question, keep avoiding it. It's going to happen. So I would like to have an answer. Are we going to move forward on this, supporting this $100,000 request for the fire company? Because we need help. It's going to happen.
All right,
Thank you.
I know your comment is the same as the last time you were on the meeting, Joe, and the first selectman did weigh in and said that the Board of Selectmen did not see it happening in this upcoming fiscal year. So I would have to admit that's probably as far as it's gone. And you can see through the discussion, I know you've stayed on through the duration. We're just talking about where can we, save some dollars to bring down the budget as it will be presented. I do understand that public safety is a priority. What's that, Joe?
Life safety is not important then. Is that what you're telling me? Your responders are not important?
May I comment, Dan?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I sent an email to Mr. Casada on 4/6 indicating what you just said. And I just want to reiterate, because there's always new people on the call, so I certainly don't want anyone leaving this call thinking that life safety is not a crucially important thing to the town and, of course, the leaders in this town, like the Board of Selectmen. I know the Board of Finance feels the same way. This is the first year that we have been presented with an ask in this capacity for something that would be really new for the town to fund paid firefighters. In response to that, and had we known this was coming this year, we did not. We did expect this to be discussed, but we did not expect it to be discussed this fiscal year. Had we known, we would have moved to appoint the committee, which we did appoint, to look at emergency operations in town sooner. We would have appointed them probably last year. I didn't realize it'd come this year, but that committee has been appointed. The committee has already met now twice to look at all of the data. So that way, when we come up with solutions for this, that they're data-based. And I know the fire company has done a lot of research on it and has some great solutions that they feel would be helpful to the situation. And we appreciate that as well. And of course, the fire chief is on this committee, which has already met twice to look at these solutions. And, over the last year, we've done some things like, we did create a video to try to recruit some more volunteers. So work has been done. We care about, we certainly do care about this topic. And that committee is going to report back to us in short order. It's supposed to be a 6-month assignment. So we do think that there will be some solutions presented, even if it comes up for an appropriation or certainly in next year's presentation for the budget. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, Joe. Any other public comments?
Yeah,
This is Sean Murphy.
Sean Murphy, go ahead.
I think the collection rate that's included in the budget may not be possible because of the economic effects of this virus situation. I think we're counting on a too high of a collection rate. And another thing, the use of the undesignated fund. So if you use, let's round it out, if you use $1 million worth of undesignated fund to balance the budget this year, the following year when you're preparing the budget, even if the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen have a 0 increase, you're going to need that additional $1 million the following year to balance the budget. And it's going to be a continuous thing. I think that the use of the surplus undesignated fund balance should only be for one-time expenses. And I will not support a $1 million increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any other public comments?
Dan, I have a virtual hand raised by Joe Gross.
Okay. Joe, can you hear me? You're being recognized. Joe Gross.
I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
I just got some quick things to say. I want to continue part on this here $225,000 question that Peter Nehru asked about. And how is this budget working with the future budget? Like next year, we keep putting things down to the thing here. Plus, if an agreement cannot be met, and I see each board has come in and they've given you their budgets, then I think the thing you go back with is each board comes in less the revenue that we haven't collected. And that's where we go with the taxpayers. I would like a quarterly report on the expenditures of this money this year, seeing it's a tight year. And that is that any expenditures that you approve, the monies are spent within the line item that you have expended to them and not being moved between other line items. That is what's got to be put out there by the board. And I think the board, you've got to give the direction on the budget to the general public, because you guys are putting in a heck of a lot of time. You're more knowledgeable of this than the average taxpayer is out there. If you go back to them for direction, they're out there looking for direction from you. That's why they elected you. And I, as Joe taxpayer, am looking for direction from you, not all the time from me back to you. So I would appreciate that. And that's your responsibility. I would like some of these questions that were made here was, You know, the thing that came out, use it or lose it, that's got to be straightened out there. And don't keep coming back. I think that if you're going to have the boards come back again next meeting, you should tell them exactly in writing what you want them to come back with. And they'll provide you with that information. And after that meeting, you should be able to come up with what you're going to present to the taxpayers. I mean, it just keep coming back and coming back. And every time they come back, they go home with something more to come back with. So I think whatever you leave today, the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen should know exactly what the Board of Finance wants next meeting. And when they give it to you with that information, you should be able, as the Board of Finance, to prepare that budget for the taxpayers.
Thank you, Joe.
I thank
Yeah,
you there. Thank you for listening to me.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
How
Be
could I
safe.
get my picture on here like you guys? Just thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Is that Brian? Brian,
Yeah.
are you getting in? Go ahead.
Brian Rathbun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this as I think Carolyn hit it right on the head. We got to deal with what's going on right now, not what ifs. And that's what I keep hearing about what ifs. Right now, we're dealing with people being laid off, people receiving money from the federal government just to make ends meet. And it's pretty scary for a taxpayer. And it's really scary because simply this year's a reval, and I mentioned this before, and you know darn well our taxes are going to go up. We're trying to anticipate that also. I personally would like to see, and it's been done before in this town with the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen, 0 increase, at least for this year. And if you need some money, yeah, we do have a rainy day fund. Take it out of there, and if everybody wants to deal with it, what ifs, let's deal with the facts right now, and them are the facts. And there's some things they can do in the selectmen's budget. I'll deal with that if they go back when the selectmen's meeting comes up. I'm trying to keep it under 2 minutes for you. And
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Board of Education, if they're worried about sending out layoffs or furloughs for teachers, they could do that, because it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. Layoffs can be a temporary layoff. And I don't understand why there's such a controversy over that. And to use and to say, okay, we'll get rid of sports, and yeah, maybe cut a teacher or two, but they could get the layoffs and save us money right now, and the teachers could come back. So I just don't understand the whole thing. But the Board of Finance, I hope you're listening and really will look at what the taxpayer can afford. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think you've heard me mention that a number of times through this evening's discussion. Is there any other public member who would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Just one.
Okay.
Michael Noonan, 32 Meadowood Drive. Our schools are our only asset this town has. I really think that we need to bring what we have forward to the people and let them decide. We have a beautiful school. We're going to have nothing in it. We're going to have old equipment. The town's not going to want to see that. So I just really think we need to let the taxpayers speak. The school is our only asset. Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you. I mean, the strategy through the last 10 years has been seeing the district as an asset. We've got a great board of Ed, a great administrative team in the district. And we see that as being able to attract other families to our town, which hopefully elevates real estate pricing, because that's the other thing that we've got. Our other asset is residential entities. We don't have a lot of commercial enterprises here in town as yet. So thanks for your input. I think there's a lot of sentiment in agreement there. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, this is last call. All right, I would like to move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
You do.
Can I ask a question first?
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
You
So
gotta be a little quick. You gotta be a little quicker,
I know, I'm
Carolyn.
sorry, I thought you were going to ask if anyone had anything to say after hearing what the public had to say. So, what was I going to ask? I have it written down a bunch of notes. I would disagree that the school is our only asset. I just want to say that. I think it's a great asset to the town, but there's a lot of things that make our town special, including all of our volunteers. My other comment is regarding what Joe Gross had to say about asking for what we want. So what I've been asking for over and over again, and if the school could provide it at our next meeting, I would happily make a decision. So what I'm asking for is what the savings that are going to be realized, an actual number based on factual data, so that we can make an informed decision. I don't believe in pushing things through just to meet a deadline. And I don't believe in making decisions without having all the facts and being able to consider all those facts first. So, thank you.
Okay, Christine Wagner would be best to answer that. And I think she did
we'll
earlier.
we'll be approving our March financials at our next meeting. We'd be happy to share those with you. They're always online every month's financials, so they'll show you each line item and where we're anticipating our expenses and everything else. So that should show you a bottom line of where we're at. We can't project it to not throw you, but to give you a number to June. But what we can do is give you our month-to-month financials, and it shows you in there what's anticipated in each line item moving forward. So for example, on transportation, we can show you where we think the savings are currently. It's on a line item on our monthly financials that we approve each month. So we will be approving those at our next meeting, and we'd be happy to share those with you, and that might give you a clearer idea of what that number is that you're looking for. Do you mind if I ask why this year's number is so imperative to our budget for next year?
What number are you referring to, Christine? The savings? Is that
Right,
is that what
right,
you're referring to?
right. Because none of that savings can be used for staffing or sports or anything like that. So that's why I'm wondering why that number is so critical to deciding on our budget for next year.
Well, because you're asking for different things that the school needs. And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to any of those things that you're asking for, but the reality is if there are savings, then, you know, traditionally it's come back to the town. I mean, and it's like wanting to approve a budget for next year and not knowing how much savings we're going to have for this year. And, you know, whether or not the Board of Finance decides to move forward with this request that you have, you know, to set up the special account. I mean, that's another issue. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but again, there has to be discussions about it. And I just think that we need to base our decisions on facts and actual numbers. So
And I understand that. And I guess the way it was explained to me was that if there was any savings and we sent it back to the town, we would be able to go to appropriations to use that to purchase all the things that we're cutting out of our budget. So it wouldn't be hitting anything that's in the budget currently that we move forward. It would fill in all those line items that we're already cutting.
And
maybe I misunderstood that appropriations piece.
Well, maybe there are additional savings. We don't know that yet. Do you know what I mean? I mean, all you're doing, we were talking about anticipated savings. The reality is, you know, we may not be returning to the school buildings this year.
So
we don't know.
So I've been doing this, I guess, with three different board chairs in my tenure here, and in two different chairs of the Board of Finance. Dan being back twice. He's a glutton for punishment, I guess. Anyways, the issue always is sometimes we don't know till August when our bills flush out what our bottom line is going to be. And I can see Dan shaking his head because Dan will start calling me in April, May, and then in May, it's like every week. And then as it gets closer to June, it's twice a week. Where are we on this? And sometimes we don't know, because sometimes there are items that we purchased that we encumber the money for, and the items don't come in until after July 1st, but we've encumbered the money. So again, this is an unusual year because we are going to have more money probably than we've had in years past. But I think for the time that Christine's been the chair, and Dan, you've been the chair on your board, we've been more than fair in making sure that we've been prudent with any funds that we have at the end of the year, and making sure that there, a couple of years ago, it was like, I think last year was 8,000. One year was 188,000. I mean, that's the way it is. And we won't know some of those numbers till August. But as Christine, the board chair, said, you can see we send a financial draft to Dan before it goes to the Board of Education for approval. And once it's approved, it's posted. So you can see every month where we stand in terms of our either a surplus or, God forbid, a deficit.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just interested in looking at that. We don't always get everything forwarded to us, so I'm not sure exactly, I mean, we do.
It's all posted on, it's all posted. All our financials are always posted online.
Okay, well, it would be nice if it could come to us rather than having to seek it out. So thank you.
Yeah, the actual profit loss for the Board of Ed is distributed to the Board of Finance members every month. So, all right. Are there any more questions at this point? Okay. So I did put a motion forward to adjourn, and did I hear a second?
Yes, sir, you did, Paul Simon.
Paul. All right. Okay, so we have a second with Paul, and all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. I guess that's all.
Aye.
Everyone.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
And so we're going to close the meeting at 9:18. Thank you very much. And Board of Finance members will have more information sent out to you and plan on meeting next week.
Thank you,
Great.
Dan.
Thank you.
John Boy.
Thank you.
John Boy, I love that. I never
Hi,
get
Mary Ellen.
Actually, you look like the Brady family with all the squares.
Go look up.
Sleep tight. Night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Yep,
Good
good night.
night.